When I walked into that farmhouse kitchen and saw my daughter, wrists raw, eyes hollow, moving like a servant in her own home, something in me snapped. I'd spent 40 years working overtime, saving every dime, sold my Harley, cashed out my IRA, and put that money into one thing: her freedom, her safety. And now, standing there, I realized strangers, her husband's family, had turned her refuge into a kingdom of cruelty. They sat in her living room with their feet on her table, shouting for coffee, while she scrubbed dishes until her skin broke. That's the moment I decided this house changes hands today. My name's Frank Hale, and this is the story of how an old man taught a lesson about respect, law, and what family really means. If you're watching this right now, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you are listening from. I want to know, if it were your daughter, what would you have done when you walked through that door? Because this was the day a father took back his daughter's home. When I pulled up that gravel drive on a July morning, the air was already thick enough to chew. Dust hung in the heat like smoke, and the cicadas were screaming their usual sermon about how everything good in this world eventually burns out. I didn't plan to stop by. Truth is, I'd just come back from the hardware store with a box of deck screws and thought I'd swing past Lena's place, maybe surprise her with barbecue for lunch. But the second I stepped out of my truck, I knew something was off. There were too many cars in the yard. A white SUV, a rusted-out minivan, a pickup with kid stickers on the back window, all jammed in the grass like weeds after a storm. When I opened the front door, it hit me. Noise, smell, chaos. The Bluetooth speaker on the counter was blasting some pop song that didn't belong in this house. The kind of song my daughter would have turned off, out of sheer respect for silence. And there she was, my Lena, standing at the sink. Her hands were buried in soapy water, wrists raw and pink, like she'd been scrubbing for days. The circles under her eyes were so deep they looked bruised. Her hair, once neat as a Sunday sermon, was tied up in a limp ponytail. She didn't even look up when I came in, just kept washing dishes that weren't hers, moving like she'd been switched to a autopilot. Behind her, the scene was something out of a nightmare. Ruth Navarro, her mother-in-law, sat on the sectional with a blanket across her knees, snapping orders like she was running a diner. "Casey, tell her I want more coffee," she barked. "Britt, where's my phone charger? The good one, not the cheap one." Britt and Casey, Emil's sisters, were sprawled across the couch, shoes up, on my daughter's coffee table, flipping through channels like they owned the place. Noah, Emil's brother, was in the backyard, yelling at his kids to stop throwing pebbles at the chicken coop, while his wife Jessa stood in the kitchen doorway, demanding more pancakes. And Lena, my only child, the woman I thought I'd finally saved, was serving them, serving like hired help in her own home. "Lena, these eggs are cold," Ruth complained, not even looking at her. "And don't forget to clean up after the kids' breakfast." They tracked dirt all over the rug. I stood there for a full 10 seconds, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. 18 years, I thought. 18 years she'd spent with that first husband, quiet man, cruel in the way silence can be. Never hit her, never had to. Just wore her down one word at a time, until she didn't believe she deserved more. When she finally left him, I told myself she was free. I sold my collector Harley 78 Electra Glide and tapped into the IRA I'd been saving since Reagan was in office. Paid the penalty, didn't care. Bought this 6-acre place out by Springfield, with its walnut trees and sloping pasture, and big bright kitchen where she could bake again. I even put it in a revocable trust with her. As trustee Amelia Briggs, my attorney, made sure of that, so no man could ever take it from her. That was last fall, less than a year ago. And now, watching her stand there like a ghost while Ruth's family devoured her home, I felt the air leave my lungs. She finally noticed me, turned slow, like she wasn't sure I was real. Dad, she whispered, voice hoarse. What are you doing here? I was about to ask you the same thing, I said. Her lips trembled, but she glanced over her shoulder at Ruth and the others. Can we talk outside? I nodded. We walked out the back door into the heat, down to the old walnut tree I'd planted a bench under last winter. She sat shoulders, sagging, eyes glistening. They came to visit, she said, voice small. Ruth said she needed a place for a week while her landlord fixed the plumbing. Then Britt showed up, said she was between jobs. Then Casey. Then Noah and his family. Emil said it'd be nice to have everyone together for the summer. Family summer, he called it. I didn't interrupt. I just listened the way old men do when silence carries more weight than words. They've been here 2 weeks, Dad. 2. They've eaten almost $900 worth of groceries. The power bill doubled. I'm sleeping on the love seat because Ruth says her back can't handle the mattress in the master. She says it's her right as his mother. She looked at me, then really looked. Emil says I'm overreacting. That word, overreacting. I'd heard it before from her first husband, from every man who thought a woman's pain was just noise. I felt something deep inside me shift. Not rage exactly, something older, heavier. Like a breaker flipping on after years of disuse. I stood, brushed the dust from my jeans, and looked back toward the farmhouse, the same one I had built fence posts around with my own 2 hands, sweating through last summer, while Lena picked out curtains. That's enough, I said quietly. She blinked. Dad, please don't. But I was already walking back toward the house, boots grinding the gravel, the sun hitting my shoulders like judgment. Inside, Ruth was laughing at something Britt had said. The TV blared a talk show. Pancake syrup dripped down the counter. I didn't say a word. I reached over, took the remote from the armrest, and turned off the TV. The silence was immediate, sharp. Every head turned my way. I slipped the remote into my pocket. All right, I said, voice steady, like I was back running a job site. We're gonna have a little talk about whose house this is. I've spent 72 years watching decent women disappear behind other people's comfort. My late wife Marlene was one of them, gentle soul, too polite to call out the folks who bled her dry a teaspoon at a time. And now my daughter was standing on the same cliff's edge, being carved down by another family of nice people who take everything but never raise a hand. We were out on the back porch, the July air heavy with the smell of dust and wet grass. The walnut tree threw its shade across the cracked concrete. Lena sat hunched over, twisting her hands in her lap, like she was the one who'd done something wrong. Dad, you don't understand, she murmured. They're family. I leaned against the railing, watching a red wasp crawl along the paint. That's what they count on, kid. The word family, it's a free pass for people who don't deserve it. She didn't answer. She just kept staring at the yard where the Navarro's kids had scattered toys and crushed the seedlings she'd planted. I could feel the shame rise in my chest like heartburn. I built this place so she could have peace. Every screw, every plank, every patch of paint, my hands were in it. The purchase had cost me $86,500 in total, $58,000 from the Harley South sale and IRA withdrawal, plus a $28,500 local banknote I was still paying off with my pension. I'd done most of the inspection repairs myself, roof patch, new wiring in the mudroom, fixed the old septic line. When the papers were ready, I'd sat across from my attorney, Amelia Briggs, in her little downtown office, oak desk, brass lamp, smell of lemon polish and coffee. She looked me square in the eye and said, Frank, if you want to make sure no one ever puts your daughter out of her own home again, you create a revocable trust. You as grantor, her as sole trustee and beneficiary. That means she runs it. Anyone else is here only with her permission. I'd asked the same question 3 times that day, just to hear her repeat it. So even if she gets married again, yes. Even if he moves in, yes, Frank. And if his family tries to squat, she'd smiled. Then she calls the sheriff's office. They're trespassing. I remembered that now, every word of it. I built this home for Lena's second chance. 2 guest rooms, a master suite overlooking the walnut grove, a little shop out back for her baking tools, raised beds for her tomatoes, and a front porch wide enough for coffee and kitias. A sanctuary meant for one woman to heal, not a halfway house for freeloaders. I turned to her, my voice low but steady. You remember what Amelia told us? She shook her head weakly. Listen close, because this is the part that matters. 1, you own it through the trust. 2, those people inside are guests, not co-owners. 3, if you tell them to leave and they don't, that's trespassing. 4, you can call the sheriff for a civil standby, and they'll make sure they go. She looked up at me, eyes wet. I can't do that, Dad. Emil will think I'm destroying his family. I took a deep breath, counting to 3 like I'd learned in union safety training. He's welcome to think whatever he wants, honey. But this place doesn't belong to Ruth or Britt or Noah. It belongs to you. You worked too damn hard to let them turn it into a vacation camp. I pulled my phone from my pocket and hit the contact marked Amelia Briggs Trust Council. She answered on the 3rd ring. Frank, what's going on, Amelia? I just need to double-check something before I start a war. Uh-oh, she said dryly. Go on. I walked a few paces away, voice low. Lena's husband's family moved in, without any written permission. They're calling it a family visit. It's been 2 weeks. She wants them gone. Then you're well within rights to issue a notice to vacate, she said. Remind her guests are licensees under trust law. She's the trustee in possession. If consent's revoked, it's revoked. If they refuse, that's trespassing. Keep documentation. Photos, timestamps, receipts. If it's not written down, it didn't happen. That last part hit home. I've lived my whole life by that rule. Union reports, job logs, safety audits. Write it down or it never existed. I thanked her, hung up, and turned to Lena. We're going to handle this the right way. By the book. I walked inside, the noise of laughter and clattering dishes hitting me like a slap. Ruth was telling some story about her son's poor judgment in picking small houses, and everyone laughed. The smell of bacon grease and perfume made the air thick. I sat at Lena's little desk by the window, opened her laptop, and typed up a single page, titled, Notice to Vacate, License Revoked. Plain language. 1 hour to leave. Signed by Lena Hale, trustee, the Hale Family Revocable Trust. While the printer warmed up, I could hear Britt in the kitchen saying, What's for brunch, Len? We're starving, as if the woman wasn't standing 2 feet from her. I opened the printer drawer under the counter. No paper. So I squatted down to grab the extra pack from the cabinet below the fridge. That's when I saw it. A single sheet of paper stuck to the fridge door with a sunflower magnet. Title in bold, Occupancy Addendum. My stomach went cold. There was a scrawled signature at the bottom, Lena's name, but it didn't look right. The loops were wrong, too sharp. And next to it, in block letters, was Ruth Navarro, witness. I peeled it off, slowly turned it toward Lena, who had just stepped into the kitchen. Sweetheart, I said, holding the page. Did you sign this? She frowned, leaned in, and shook her head. No, I've never seen that before. For a second, neither of us spoke, just the faint whir of the printer, spitting out the eviction notice. That paper in my hand was more than forgery, it was war. When I walked back into that house, the air shifted. You could feel it like static before a lightning strike. The women on the couch barely looked up, just the flick of eyes that said, You don't belong here. I didn't speak right away. I moved between the TV and the couch, planted both boots on the rug, and turned off the screen. The silence landed heavy. A commercial jingle died mid-note. "I'm not here as anybody's dad today," I said, my voice steady but low. "I'm here as the grantor of the Hale family trust. And I've got business to settle." Ruth adjusted the blanket over her knees like she was a queen rearranging her robe. "Frank, don't start. This is our son's home too. You don't get to march in here and play landlord." I didn't blink. "You're wrong about that." I unfolded the paper in my hand, the notice to vacate. The words were clean bold and carried the kind of weight only something signed in ink can have. "This is a formal revocation of your right to be on this property," I said, reading every line slowly. "You have 1 hour to gather your belongings and leave. After that, refusal constitutes trespassing under Greene County law." Britt snorted. "You're seriously giving us an eviction notice? This isn't some apartment, old man." Casey laughed, twirling her phone between her fingers. "Paper games. You boomers love your paperwork." "Keep laughing," I said, calm as a man reading a meter. "But this paper holds more weight than your jokes." Ruth leaned forward, voice syrupy. "Frank, dear, maybe you've forgotten this house belongs to both Lena and my son Emil. Married couples share everything." "No," I said flatly. "This house was purchased by me, placed into a revocable trust before your son even came along. Lena's the sole trustee and beneficiary. That makes her the only one who decides who's allowed through that door." Ruth's teeth faltered. "You can't just throw family out, Frank. We're not strangers." I reached for my phone, opened my contacts, and hit speaker. "Let's clear this up for everyone." It rang twice. "Frank, everything all right?" came Amelia's voice. "Still fine, Amelia? I've got the Navarro family here at the property. They're claiming joint ownership through marriage. Can you explain their status under the trust?" She didn't miss a beat. "Certainly. Lena Hale is the sole trustee and legal possessor of that property. Any individuals staying there are guests, what we call licensees. If she revokes consent, they must leave immediately. Refusal equals trespassing. And Frank, that occupancy addendum you mentioned earlier, if her signature was forged, that's a felony criminal forgery." The room went dead quiet. Ruth's jaw tightened. Britt stopped smirking. Even Casey's phone froze mid-scroll. Amelia continued, voice crisp. "You're entitled to call the sheriff's office for a civil standby if needed. They'll enforce it." "Thank you, Amelia," I said, keeping my eyes on Ruth. "You've been very helpful." "Good luck," she said dryly. And Frank recorded everything. I ended the call. The silence afterward was thick enough to cut. Noah, the brother, built like a barn but not nearly as solid, stood up, getting too close. "You think you can just kick us out like we're squatters?" I looked up at him. "I don't think, son." "I know." He puffed up his chest like a rooster trying to look taller. "But I'd worked 30 years around high voltage. Men with that same look used to try to scare me on job sites. You learn early the only thing that bites harder than electricity is fear. And I wasn't afraid. I didn't step back, didn't blink, just stared until he finally did." Ruth tried to pivot, her tone soft now, her eyes shining with practiced hurt. "Frank, please. We're family. You wouldn't treat your own flesh and blood this way. Family doesn't drain $900 of groceries in 2 weeks," I said evenly. "Family doesn't spike the power bill or let kids destroy someone else's garden. And family sure as hell doesn't make my daughter sleep on a sofa in her own house." Britt muttered, drama queen, under her breath. I didn't even look at her. I walked to the fridge, pulled the sunflower magnet loose, and posted the notice to vacate right beside that fake occupancy addendum. 2 pieces of paper side by side, one true, one lie. "Read 'em both," I said quietly. "Only one of them's real." Ruth stood up, slow and deliberate, clutching the back of the couch like she needed it to steady herself. You're making a mistake. Emil will fix this when he gets home. I turned. Where is your son exactly? He's out with his father, Ruth said too quickly. Looking at a commercial lot for investment. He's busy handling the bank paperwork. Bank paperwork, I repeated, letting it hang. Yes, she said, chin tilting up. He co-signed a summer subtenancy agreement. Perfectly legal. That was a lie. I knew it. There's no such thing as a summer subtenancy under a private trust, not without the trustee's signature. I could see Lena at the kitchen doorway, pale trembling, watching her father stand against an army. I gave Ruth one long look, the kind that said the conversation was over, even if she didn't know it yet. Then I guess we'll let the sheriff and your paperwork sort it out, I said, voice steady as a closing door. Inside, I felt it a low, steady hum. Not rage, not triumph, just purpose. This house was going to belong to my daughter again, before the sun went down. I stepped into the mudroom and shut the door behind me. The house's noise, laughter, clattering dishes, that Bluetooth speaker still humming low, muffled into a dull, hateful hum. My pulse thudded in my ears. For a moment I just stood there, hand braced on the washer, breathing through my nose, like a man steadying before a weld. I'd been here before in a different house, a different life day. Winter, 1986, Marlene, my wife standing in her sister's kitchen, while that woman sliced her apart with sugar-coated words. You'd be prettier if you didn't try so hard. Frank works too much. Maybe that's on you. And me, I just stood there, hands in my coat pockets, watching my wife's shoulders fold in on themselves, like paper burning from the edges. I never said a damn word. And I've carried that silence like a stone in my chest ever since. Years later, when Marlene was dying, she called me close one night in hospice. Her breath was shallow, her skin gray and thin as tracing paper. Frank, she whispered, promise me something. Keep our girl safe, even from herself if you have to. I promised. And now, looking at the mudroom wall with its hooks and work gloves and dog leash, no one used anymore, I realized that promise had come due. I wiped the sweat off my neck and looked around for what I needed. The old metal file box in the cabinet. Inside, the trust binder, banknote receipts. The papers that proved what I already knew in my bones. The numbers were burned into memory. 80/65 total. 50,000 from the Harley and IRA paid the penalty, no regrets. 28,500 note from Springfield Federal at 4.9%. And every month I wrote that check like clockwork. This house wasn't charity, it was sacrifice. I opened the little gun safe by the bench and pulled out the laminated card Amelia had given me when we signed the trust last year. 3 steps for removing trespassers, it read in her neat black ink keys. Revoke consent in writing. 2. Call sheriff for civil standby. Record everything. Simple enough. Out the small window, the gravel road shimmered in the heat. At the end of it, county cruisers sometimes turned around during patrols. A quiet area, mostly retirees and hobby farmers. Nearest neighbor, Mrs. Delgado, 76, widowed, tough as hickory bark. She'd been a nurse before her knees went bad. Keeps binoculars on her porch for bird watching, but everyone knows she watches out for the rest of us. Good. I'd need a witness if this turned ugly. I took my phone out, switched the camera on, and hit record. Set it face down in my shirt pocket lens, peeking through the flap. Not for drama, just insurance. A habit from a lifetime in the union. If it isn't written down or filmed, it never happened. I opened the door back into the kitchen. Ruth was now assigning my daughter a lunch menu, like a foreman shouting orders. Lena, there's no tuna, she said. Run to town and get some, would you? And I'd like lemonade this time, fresh, not that powdered stuff. Britt laughed. You might as well make enough for all of us, honey. You know we're starving. My daughter turned toward the pantry, slow automatic. I'd had enough. Kitchen's closed, I said. My voice came out flat, but it cut through everything. The clatter stopped. Heads turned. Ruth blinked, smile faltering. Excuse me, I said, the kitchen's closed, I repeated, stepping fully into the room. No more orders. No more groceries. No more anything. You're packing. You've got until noon. Casey gave a short, mocking laugh. Oh, he's serious. I looked at her. Out by noon, I said. Leave what you didn't bring. Sheriff, if you raise. 3 sentences, clear, non-negotiable. Lena stood frozen by the counter, eyes wide, torn between fear and relief. Britt, smirking, took out her phone and held it up like a trophy. You're threatening us. In our own home, she said, pressing 911 on speaker. Dispatch, a woman's voice answered. What's your emergency? Britt looked me dead in the eye. Yes, I'd like to report an elderly man threatening my family. He's shouting and trying to throw us out of our residence. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I just stood there, calm, steady, as the words elderly man threatening us echoed in the hot, still air. And for the first time all morning, Ruth Navarro looked uncertain, because deep down she could tell I wasn't bluffing. The sheriff's cruiser came rolling down the gravel road at 11:06 a.m. Sunlight bounced off the windshield. In white flashes, the sound of tires crunching over stone, sharp as a metronome. Ruth had stopped pacing just long enough to adjust her hair in the reflection of the window. Britt and Casey sat like smug spectators at a courtroom they thought they'd already won. The man who stepped out of the cruiser wasn't the kind of cop who came in swinging. Deputy Carter Harlan, broad shoulders, gray stubble, the calm of a man who's seen every brand of nonsense the county can throw at him. I recognized him from church fish fries and the VFW hall. He tipped his hat when he saw me. Morning, Frank, he said mildly. Heard there's a bit of a dispute. You could say that, I replied, handing over my driver's license. Thanks for coming on short notice. He nodded and turned to Ruth, who was already stepping forward, like she'd rehearsed it. Officer, she began, syrup in her tone. I'm Ruth Navarro, and this is my family. We've been living here with my son and daughter-in-law. This gentleman came in, shouting, waving papers, trying to evict us from our own home. He's not well. You can see how agitated he is. I kept my mouth shut. There's a power in silence when someone's lying that loud. Deputy Harlan glanced at me, then at Lena. Ma'am, you're the homeowner? Lena's hands shook a little, but her voice didn't break. I'm the trustee, she said, pulling the laminated trust certificate from the folder I'd given her. This property is in my name only. These people were guests. I'm revoking consent for them to stay. The deputy studied the paper, his thumb running along the seal. Trustee. Huh. All right. He looked at Ruth. Ma'am, I'll need to see some proof of what you're saying about this being a joint residence. Ruth's smile stayed frozen, but her eyes flickered. Well, my son, her husband, he's on the paperwork. Surely she's not going to throw out her own family. She can, I said quietly. And she is. Let's take this one room at a time, Harlan said, still polite. Everybody stay put. He walked through the house with his notepad, methodical as a man counting fence posts. He stopped first at the master bedroom. Ruth's suitcase sat open on the bed, Lena's bed, her robe hanging on the door. He jotted notes, then moved to the kitchen. His eyes landed on the notice to vacate taped to the fridge, and beside it, the occupancy addendum I'd peeled off earlier. He read both, frowned, and pulled out his phone to take pictures. Ma'am, he said to Lena, you mind if I make a few calls? Of course not. He stepped onto the porch, radio crackling. Dispatch, it's Harlan. Confirming civil standby protocol for private property under trust ownership. Got one party claiming joint marital interest. No documentation yet. A pause. Static. Then a voice from dispatch. Confirmed, Carter. If the trustee revokes consent, you stand by to keep peace while guests vacate. 10-4. He nodded, then made another call. Attorney Briggs, this is Deputy Harlan with Greene County Sheriff's Office. Frank Hale gave me your number. I need clarity on this property's status. Even from the porch I could hear Amelia's voice crisp through the speaker. The Hale Family Revocable Trust sole trustee, Lena Hale. Her husband has no ownership interest. Any guests, even relatives, must leave upon revocation. If anyone forged her signature on an occupancy document, that's criminal forgery under Missouri Statute 578.092. Appreciate it, ma'am, the deputy said. That's all I needed. He came back inside, writing something in his pad. All right, he said evenly. Here's how this goes. You folks, he gestured to Ruth and her crew, are guests. Consent's been revoked. You'll need to pack up your belongings and head out. I'll stay till you're clear. Noah snorted. You serious? We've got rights. Harlan didn't even look up. You sure do, Mr. Navarro. You've got the right to leave peacefully, and the right to remain silent if you don't. Britt muttered. This is insane. Not really, he said, eyes still on his notepad. It's Missouri law. Refusal to leave after consent's revoked is trespass. Forgery of property documents is a felony. Simple as that. That last part landed like a dropped wrench. Ruth's hand fluttered to her chest. Forgery. Are you accusing me of? I'm not accusing anyone, one, Harlan said gently. Just telling you what happens if that addendum turns out fake. She swallowed hard, eyes darting toward the fridge. Then, as if on cue, she switched tactics. Deputy, I have a bad back. I can't lift boxes. Surely you don't expect a woman my age to... Don't worry, came a voice from outside. We all turned. Mrs. Delgado was standing at the property line, arms crossed, a rolling dolly at her side. I heard the ruckus, she said matter-of-factly. Figured somebody might need help moving. Her presence hit like fresh air through a smoke-filled room. The deputy smiled faintly. Appreciate that, ma'am. Ruth blinked, thrown off. Who is that neighbor? I said. She keeps an eye out. Mrs. Delgado wheeled the dolly right up to the porch, her voice firm but kind. Let's get those bags loaded, ladies. No sense dragging this out. My back's not perfect either, but at least I don't fake it. For the first time all day I almost laughed. Ruth's mouth snapped shut. She looked ready to cry or scream, maybe both, but the deputy's calm presence left her nowhere to aim it. Harlan leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. Clock starts now, folks. Let's get you moving. The air felt lighter for a moment, until we all heard it. The heavy slam of a truck door out on the driveway. Ruth's face shifted instantly from fear to satisfaction. That'll be my son, she said, straightening her blouse. And his father. I turned toward the window. Sure enough, Emil's truck was there, dust still rising around its tires. The cavalry had arrived. The screen door slammed open like a judge's gavel. Emil strode in first, sunburned from the job site face, streaked with sweat and confusion. His father trailed behind him, slower, quieter, the man who never seemed to take sides. Ruth was on her feet before her son even cleared the threshold. Emil, thank God. Your wife's lost her mind. She and her father are trying to throw us out. She turned dramatically to the deputy. Officer, this is my son, Emil Navarro. He's on the marriage certificate. This is his home too. Deputy Harlan didn't even blink. Sir, he said evenly, I'm told this property is owned under a trust in your wife's name only. We're just keeping the peace while guests pack up. Emil's eyes bounced from me to Lena, then to the deputy. What is this? He asked, voice already tight. I didn't answer. I just handed him my phone. You want the truth? Here. On the screen were the photos, Lena's wrists raw, from scrubbing the timestamps from this morning. Then the screenshots, grocery store receipts, $287, $302, $311, 2 weeks of feeding Ruth's army. Beneath that, a small handwritten note I'd made 13 nights on love seat. Emil's brow furrowed deeper with each swipe. Also these, I said, pulling the stack of papers from the folder, the notice to vacate the trust certificate, and that fake occupancy addendum. He took them all silent. The papers shook in his hands. Then Lena spoke. Her voice was soft, but it carried. You want to know what's been happening, Emil? I wake up at 5 every morning to make breakfast for 8 people who don't say thank you. I clean until midnight, because your ceases to think dishes wash themselves. The kids flood the bathroom every night. Your mother took our bedroom because of her back pain. I sleep on the love seat. I haven't had one uninterrupted night of sleep since they arrived. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shouting. Just speaking truth with a spine of steel. Emil opened his mouth, but the words tangled. He looked to his mother, then to Lena, like a compass caught between two norths. Ruth reached out and gripped his arm. Don't let them poison you, Emil. They are twisting everything. We're family, your real family. I stayed quiet for a long beat, long enough for him to feel the weight of the silence. Then I said it plain and hard as gravel. Your wife is your family now. The room froze. You can't keep standing in the middle, I said. You've got to choose which side of that door you're on. For a second, Emil just stood there, breathing, heavy eyes darting. His father shifted behind him, rubbing the back of his neck, like he was tired of holding something in. Finally, the older man spoke. Son, he said quietly, your mother's been wrong on this one. I told her weeks ago this wasn't right. I told her we were taking advantage. Ruth spun on him, face gone red. You said what I said, he repeated, voice firmer, now that it wasn't right to turn another woman's home into a hotel. But you wouldn't hear it. Ruth's mask cracked. You always take their side, always. You'll regret this, all of you. She turned to Deputy Harlan, jabbing a finger toward me. I'm filing for a protective order. This man has been harassing me, threatening me in front of witnesses. And I'll be reporting him for elder abuse too. Deputy Harlan didn't even blink. Ma'am, he said in that calm drawl of his false reportings, a Class A misdemeanor. Let's not add that to your day. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again, but no sound came. Meanwhile, Emil was staring down at the papers in his hands. His thumb brushed the forged occupancy addendum. His face drained of color. I saw it hit him, the looped flourish at the bottom of the signature, that familiar swoop his mother used when she signed Christmas cards. Ruth's flourish. He looked up at her, pale and trembling, his jaw working like he wanted to speak, but couldn't. And that was the moment, the exact second the balance began to tip. The moment Ruth's handwriting gave her away, the house changed temperature. You could feel it, the way air shifts before a storm breaks. No more pretense, no more charm. Just resignation and the dull scrape of cardboard against hardwood. Deputy Harlan stayed put by the door, arms folded, quiet authority irradiating off him. Let's keep this civil, folks, he said. You've got an hour to gather your things. We'll document as we go. So we did. I ran it like a job site, years of foreman habits kicking in. The dining table became the sorting station. Left side, what you brought. Right side, what stays. I set my phone on the hutch, camera running steady. Documentation always. Britt dragged her duffel from the hall, muttering under her breath about drama queens. When she thought no one was looking, she reached into the shadow box on the wall and palmed something shiny, a small silver locket that used to hold Marlene's photo. Britt, I said evenly. She froze. Open your hand. Her eyes darted to the deputy. She opened it slowly. The locket sat there trembling on her palm. That belongs here, I said, holding out my hand. Her face went crimson. She dropped it into my palm without a word and walked away, fast, her eyes glassy. Across the room, Casey was yanking a cord from the wall, my wife's vintage amber glass lamp, the one Lena bought back from an antique shop last Christmas. "Careful with that," I said. "It's ours," Casey shot back. "Mom said it was a gift." Lena turned from the counter holding a folded paper. "No, it isn't," she said softly. "Steady now. Here's the receipt. I bought it at Spring Street Antiques. December 17th. Cash." Casey's mouth twitched, but she set the lamp back down. In the bathroom, I found something worse, a half-completed USPS change of address form, taped to the inside of a vanity drawer. The forwarding address: from Lena Hale, 122 Cedar Ridge Road, to Ruth Navarro, 18B Maplewood Duplex. I stared at it for a long second, the weight of the implication settling in, like bad weather. This wasn't just freeloading, it was control. Ruth hadn't planned to visit, she'd planned to own. "Deputy," I called. "You'll want a photo of this." He stepped in, whistled low. "Well, that's new." He snapped pictures for the report. Down the hallway, the kids were crying. The little one was sitting in a pile of half-packed toys, wailing for her stuffed rabbit. Noah, their father, was sulking by the porch, kicking gravel, muttering about ingrates and cold hearts. Jessa, the other sister, brushed past me with a laundry basket full of folded towels she hadn't washed. "I hope you're proud," she said. "You broke up a family." I didn't answer, but Lena flinched. She turned her back to them, shoulders trembling. Ruth stood near the doorway, arms crossed, head high, like a dethroned queen clinging to ceremony. "Look at you," she said to Lena, her voice trembling with venom. "You think you've won. You've just proven what kind of wife you are. Ungrateful, disloyal, cold." Lena's lip quivered, but she said nothing. I moved to stand just behind her, close enough that she could feel me there, not touching, just present. When Ruth finally looked away, I guided Lena through the kitchen and out the back door. We sat on the steps side by side, the boards hot through our jeans. The air smelled of cut grass and summer heat, and something like exhaustion. She rubbed her arms. "I hate that I'm shaking," she whispered. "They made me feel like I was crazy for wanting peace in my own home." "You're not crazy," I said. "You're just tired." She let out a long breath, staring toward the walnut tree. "I don't think I've been this tired since the divorce." I nodded. "Me either." That made her smile, a small one. Yeah." I looked down at my hands. The skin was thinner now, the veins raised. "I get scared sometimes, Lena. Scared of outliving of being old and loud and not helpful anymore." She turned to me. "Dad, I'm serious," I said, forcing a laugh. "All my life I've been the fixer. The man with the wrench, the plan, the answer. But you get to my age and the world starts looking at you like your warranty's expired." Her eyes softened. "You're my safe place, Dad. You always were. That's not going to expire." The words hit harder than she knew. For a long moment, we just sat there, two people who'd both been through too many winters and were still somehow standing. Behind us, boxy fossies thumped, voices murmured. The storm was moving out, leaving the air hollow and heavy. Then through the open door, Emil's voice. "Frank, can I talk to you alone?" Lena tensed. I squeezed her shoulder gently. "It's okay. Go sit with Deputy Harlan for a bit." She nodded, reluctant, and walked back inside. I stayed on the steps, the boards creaking under my weight, waiting for the man who'd just learned what kind of mother he really had, and what kind of husband he still had the chance to be. Emil stood by the walnut tree, hat in hand, looking 10 years older than he had that morning. The late light made his face look carved shadow in the hollows, regrets in the eyes. He didn't speak right away, just breathed hard, like the words were heavy freight, He didn't know how to unload. I was raised, he finally said, voice low, to keep the peace, to smooth things over when Mom got loud. My dad would just leave the room. I learned to stay quiet, to wait it out. He rubbed his face with both hands. I thought if I stayed neutral, everybody would calm down eventually. I didn't see how much that silence was kicking her. He meant Lena. I let him talk. Men like him, men like me, need to hear their own sheaf out loud before it changes shape. I don't know how to fix it, he said, looking up at me. But I want to. I want to make this right. I took a long breath, the kind that tastes like rust and memory. Apologies are rent, son, I said finally. Respect is the mortgage. You want to stay here. You pay the mortgage. He nodded, eyes wet. Yes, sir. Behind him, Ruth's caravan rumbled down the gravel drive. 2 cars. 1 trailer, the last of her kingdom packed tight. Deputy Harlan followed at a steady distance until the dust swallowed them both. For the first time in weeks, the house was quiet. Real quiet. That night, Lena and Emil stayed up till 2 cleaning. By the next morning, I could smell paint from the master bedroom, lemon polish from the floors. Emil fixed the sagging cabinet door. Lena rearranged the kitchen 1 drawer at a time, like reclaiming the house inch by inch. By the end of the week, the place looked like it had exhaled. Emil found a therapist, couples counseling every Thursday, individual sessions Mondays. Lena set up a small baking corner in the mudroom, a second-hand mixer, neat jars of flour and sugar, cooling racks on a folding table. When I stopped by, the air smelled like butter and cinnamon. Feels like home again, she said. Yeah, I told her, but don't forget, peace has to be maintained. Like a fence. She smiled. Then I'll keep the posts painted. For a few days, things held steady. Until the mail came. The envelope was thick, stamped with a county seal. Inside, a notice of filing marital interest affidavit. My gut dropped. Ruth had gone to the recorder's office and filed a sworn statement, claiming that the Cedar Ridge property was community marital property, attaching a copy of the forged occupancy addendum as Exhibit A. In legal terms, she'd clouded the title. In human terms, she'd found a way to keep her claws in the house without being inside it. 2 days later, code enforcement showed up, clipboard in hand, saying they'd received an anonymous complaint about unauthorized commercial baking operations in a residential kitchen. Lena's face went white. They think I'm running a business. I baked 6 loaves for the church fair. Someone's setting you up, I said. But we both knew who. I called Amelia. She didn't waste a minute. By noon, she'd filed a motion to expunge Cloud on title with the county judge. That same day, she sent a cease and desist letter to Ruth for mail tampering. Turns out the postal forwarding attempt tied directly back to her duplex. She also forwarded the forged addendum to the county prosecutor's office. Let her play games, Amelia said. We'll play by the law. And we'll win. The judge set a hearing date 3 weeks out. Lena's stomach was in knots, but I told her, we've got the paper, the proof, and the truth. That's a solid foundation. I almost believed it myself. Then 3 days later, the certified letter came. Ruth's attorney. Heavy bound paper, cursive header. It read, Dear Ms. Hale, my client, Mrs. Ruth Navarro, is prepared to seek equitable relief in Greene County Circuit Court unless you immediately restore family access to the premises at 122 Cedar Ridge Road. Mrs. Navarro's intent has never been hostile, merely protective of her son's marital interest. Please respond within 5 business days to avoid further legal action. Lena stared at the page, her hands trembling. She's not done, she whispered. No, I said quietly, folding the letter back into the envelope. But neither are we. Greene County Courthouse has the kind of quiet that feels earned. The kind built by generations of people who worked with their hands all week and showed up here on Fridays praying for fairness. I've always had respect for rooms like that, places where ordinary folks try to get their lives back, one affidavit at a time. The air was cool, smelled faintly of lemon polish and bureaucracy. Lena sat beside Amelia Briggs at the petitioner's table, pale but steady, her hair pulled back tight like armor. Emil sat a row behind her, his hands folded, a man trying to live down his own blindness. I stayed in the back pew, observer, backup witness. Ruth came in wearing gray, flanked by her attorney, a man with expensive shoes and a tired smirk. She didn't look at Lena. Didn't have to. The smirk did it for her. When the clerk called the case Hale versus Navarro motion to expunge Cloud on title, you could have heard a pin drop. Amelia stood like a surgeon about to cut. "Your Honor, this is not complicated," she began, her voice even and sharp as cold steel. "We have a trust instrument executed 9 months before the marriage. We have recorder stamps confirming sole ownership. We have receipts establishing the property purchase from Mr. Frank Hale's personal funds, premarital independent. And we have entered into evidence a law enforcement report documenting both the notice to vacate and discovery of a forged occupancy addendum." She clicked her pen, calm. "We'll also show a handwriting analysis from a court-accepted expert, indicating that the signature on the addendum is not Mrs. Hale's, but bears multiple points of similarity to Mrs. Navarro's known signature samples." Across the aisle, Ruth's attorney shifted in his chair. "Your Honor," he began, "we don't dispute the timing. We're simply asking the court to consider equitable factors, family reliance, emotional investment, the spirit of hospitality. My client acted under a genuine belief that her son's marriage conferred shared rights. She's not a forger. She's a mother." Judge Cranston, a square-shouldered woman with 30 years of seeing through sentiment, removed her glasses and said quietly, "Title is title, counsel. Equity does not reward bad faith." Then she turned to the bailiff. "Make sure the record includes the sheriff's report, the UC forwarding form, and the handwriting exhibit." It was over faster than I expected. Her ruling was crisp. No hesitation. The Cloud on title is hereby expunged. Any purported claim of marital or equitable interest by Mrs. Navarro is denied. The document labeled Occupancy Addendum is determined fraudulent and shall be referred to the Greene County prosecutor for review. Mrs. Navarro is further instructed to refrain from any interference or contact that may constitute harassment or mail tampering. Court adjourned. The gavel cracked once clean. Ruth's attorney gathered his papers fast, eyes low. Ruth sat frozen for a heartbeat, then rose, chin high but trembling. Emil didn't move to her. Not this time. Outside on the courthouse steps, the October wind was crisp, almost sweet. Emil stood between us, his wife and his father-in-law, looking equal parts ashamed and relieved. "I should have seen it sooner," he said quietly. "All these years I thought keeping Mom calm was love. But it wasn't love. It was fear dressed up as duty." Lena reached for his hand. "You see it now. That's what matters." He nodded. "Then I want to build something better, with boundaries." So that afternoon at Amelia's office, they wrote it down, the boundary agreement. Clear, simple, enforceable. All contact with Ruth occurs only in public places, time limited. No unannounced visits. No overnight stays. No spare keys. No shared finances. No exceptions. Lena filed a no trespass letter with the sheriff's office listing each in-law by name. Deputy Harlan himself signed as receiving officer, one brow lifted with quiet pride. By evening, the house at Cedar Ridge breathed easier again. Emil and I framed out a small oven alcove in the mudroom, code-compliant, keen wiring, fresh drywall smell in the air. The rhythm of hammer and nails sounded like healing. Mrs. Delgado showed up around dusk with a pitcher of lemonade and her usual blend of sugar and blunt honesty. "Told you the truth wins slow but sure," she said, handing me a glass. "Just had to hold your ground." Lena laughed for the first time in weeks. Real laughter, the kind that shakes off dust from your bones. The sun was melting behind the orchard gold, spilling through the trees. For a moment, I thought, maybe, just maybe, we were done fighting. Then the mail truck rattled down the lane. The carrier waved from the cab, left a thick manila envelope at the gate. My name was written across it in the familiar looping flourish of Ruth Navarro's hand. I didn't open it. Not yet. Because some storms don't end. They just change direction. By November, the walnut leaves had gone copper, curling into coins of light that drifted down slow and silent. The air smelled of wood smoke and yeast, Lena's doing. Every dawn before the sun lifted over the ridge, she was already in her kitchen, the windows fogged from the first trays of cinnamon rolls rising in the oven. She called her cottage bakery Second Rise. Said it was about bread, but anyone who knew her understood it was about her. A woman who'd been knocked flat, risen once, and somehow found a way to ease again. Emil had started showing up to therapy without reminders. I saw it in his face, less guilt, more humility. He helped her with deliveries before heading to the hardware store, where he'd picked up extra shifts. There was a quiet steadiness to him now, like a man rebuilding his own foundation, one slow nail at a time. The house breathed like a home again. Then, one still afternoon, I finally opened Ruth's envelope. It wasn't long, 3 pages, handwritten, blue ink, on lined paper. No perfume, no dramatics. Just her voice, smaller than I'd ever seen it. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't defend herself. She just wrote, "I confused control with love. I thought if I managed everything I'd be needed. And if I was needed, I couldn't be left. I see now how wrong that was. Tell Lena I'm sorry, not for being her mother-in-law, but for being a burden she didn't deserve. I won't come back uninvited. I'll keep my distance and my peace." I sat on the porch for a long while, after reading it, the paper trembling in my old hands. There's a kind of forgiveness that doesn't come with trumpets or tears. It just arrives, quietly sits beside you, and waits to see what you'll do next. I didn't write back. Not yet. Dignity means you don't rush the next chapter. Sometimes the silence is the response. Weeks later, one orange dusk, Emil and I sat on the tailgate of his truck, 2 men watching the last light fade over Lena's little bakery window. She was inside humming, lining up proofing trays for tomorrow's bake. The smell of cinnamon drifted through the screen door. "She's good at it," Emil said softly. "She's happy." "Keep it that way," I told him. He nodded. "I intend to." I waited a beat, then looked him square in the eye. "Son, I've spent a lifetime learning how to fix broken things. But some things you don't fix, you guard. So let's be clear. If I ever find her crying in that kitchen again, because of you or anyone you bring into her life, there won't be a second speech. You understand me?" He met my gaze, no defensiveness, just quiet acceptance. "Yes, sir. I do." "Good," I said, finishing my coffee. "Every house needs guardrails, every marriage too." He smiled faintly. "You're not wrong." We sat there a while longer, letting the night settle around us. The orchard hummed with crickets. Somewhere down the road, Mrs. Delgado's porch light blinked on like a friendly beacon. When the chill crept in, I clicked the porch light remote on my keychain, and watched the farmhouse glow warm against the dusk. Love, I said mostly to myself, is work. Building, maintaining, knowing when to lock the gate and when to leave it open. Inside, Lena was laughing at something Emil had said, an unguarded, easy laugh, the kind I hadn't heard since she was little. I pocketed the remote, stepped inside, and let the screen door close behind me. For the first time in a long time, it sounded like home. You know, I've learned something through all this. It's not the shouting that breaks a family. It's the silence. The years you spend swallowing what should have been said out loud. That day when I turned off the TV and told them to get out, it wasn't anger. It was love with a backbone. Love that finally decided enough was enough. My daughter doesn't live in fear anymore. She laughs when she bakes. The house smells like cinnamon, not control. And me, I sleep easier, knowing that when I'm gone, she'll know how to protect her peace without waiting for anyone's permission. Tell me in the comments, do you think I did the right thing? And if this story hit home for you, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to remember respect isn't given. It's enforced with dignity.